everybody. Welcome to episode 35. Yes, you can believe it. 35 of the Corner Blue. I'm here with Uor. This is Andres Vico, and we're just here to process a little bit, break things down since it's the end of the first match window of the qualifiers, which was all over the place, right? We started with really hyped up. The match against the US just kind of cemented things as going in an upward positive trend. But we're here to break down the Honduras match and, of course, the Canada match. And yeah, it's something that I guess isn't as positive as we would have wanted it to. A 3-0 shutout is never fun to watch, especially with some of the mistakes that were made. But here to break it down with you guys. Uro, how you feeling after this first window of the qualifiers?
Feeling great. Obviously, I think everyone is disappointed about the last game, but this is just the beginning. I think it's going to be hard. It's going to be very hard for a lot of teams to play 3 games in less than a week. That's not an excuse, of course. I think that losing against Canada was, in there within the possibilities of the first 3 matches. But given that we didn't win any of the matches at home, I was hoping for better results in Canada. That didn't happen. But I think there's a long road ahead of us. There's 11 games, and right now is not, the time to be sad about the fact that we lost against Canada. I think it's time to get back up, to analyze the videos and see where we went wrong, where there are rooms for improvements, and try not to make the same mistakes again. I think we all knew going in that, playing qualifiers is a completely different ball game than playing a Gold Cup. The intensity is much higher. You cannot make mistakes because you're going to pay for them. And I just hope that our young team, because we have a lot of players who've never played a World Cup qualifier before, that they can adjust very quickly to the pressure, to the intensity of the matches in a World Cup qualifier, and that we can put up a fight for October and the remaining of the qualifiers. I don't think that what we saw against Canada is who we are. Again, just like some of the things we saw in the Gold Cup, we kind of went into the game not fully focused, and we pay for those mistakes. And this time we didn't have the capacity to kind of get back into the game like we did against Qatar, for example, back in the Gold Cup. But it's hard. It's hard when you're down 1-0 within the first 5 minutes and you're down 2-0 within the first 11 minutes. It messes up the entire plan that the coaching staff had. And that combined with the quantity of matches that we had to play, we depend on making a use of our full roster, and all the players should be ready to go in and start at any time.
Yeah, I think you mentioned something pretty important, which is the high volume of matches in the window, which is something that is new. It's something novel to us, and I feel like for the most part, sports in general have gone back to almost pre-COVID days, right? Everyone got their season in the middle of 2020 out of the way, whether it was no fans in the stadium, the long breaks in between. The new seasons have started up again, and you hardly see evidence of the pandemic in a sense with domestic leagues and different sports. But when it comes to the qualifiers, it's still impacted by it. Why? All the qualifying was pushed off for months just because of the pandemic. And then on top of that, you had the format change. That being said, though, if it wouldn't have been for that format change, there wouldn't have been that window for some of the changes within the FESFUT and the coaching staff to have occurred and to manifest themselves the way that they have. So it's a mixed bag, ladies and gentlemen, because yes, there's a side of me that wishes that it would have just been an hexagonal and it would have cut off the ranking based off of that new system they implemented, they as in CONCACAF. But because of the extension of it, as we mentioned previously, that it could have been this benefit, this diamond in the rough for the national team. It gave us a little time to switch things up, to make changes, and I think that definitive friendly against the U.S. back in December of 2020 kind of sealed the fate of the previous process, the previous coaching staff, and created a need for a new one. That being said, though, the new coaching staff has only been there 4 months, ladies and gentlemen, and that's an extremely short amount of time when you look into some of the other countries and how they've handled their qualifying processes and their teams. And we're seeing a reflection of that, whether we like it or not. Yes, you can bring in as many new guys, younger guys as you want, but at the same time, they're going to have growing pains. Just like we saw the U.S. have its own growing pains in the Cusca, we're going to have those same growing pains throughout this qualifying tournament. We're not showing up to the dance in our best suit and with, the best amount of practices under our belt, right? We're showing up to these with a lot of limitations, and I'm not excusing anybody, but I think that's the main thing that people tend to forget because we want that win. We hate taking that loss, especially with the national team. It's almost like it's a bigger reflection of who we are than, let's say, our local team in whatever sport, right? It's our national team. This is like, it represents me. I identify with it. And if I show up to work or school or wherever it is and people can cap on me because my national team sucked and they got to see it, yes, it sucks. But I'm digressing. I think the main point is you have to be realistic with the point in this journey, and it's still relatively early. You're seeing a lot of these guys getting their first taste of high intensity qualifying matches, and that's that the foreign guys, for the most part, aren't in, top tier leagues. And that's one thing to consider. But as we've mentioned throughout this program, this show, the players that do have that exposure to a higher intensity, higher speed, higher level of professionalism, it's going to come through. And that doesn't mean that every single one that plays abroad or in other leagues deserves to be on the national team. That's another thing that people get kind of confused, because there's a lot of guys that aren't getting called up. So I think to put this into perspective, it's early. These guys are getting their first experiences wearing that kit at that stage, and you're going to see mistakes being made. I mean, it's not about singling people out. However, we keep making the same mistake of, miscue on trying to create out of the back. I think that's been a theme that we've seen within, the Gold Cup and this match. And Hugo Perez has even mentioned it to the press too. Look, if these guys fuck up trying to touch from the back, blame it on me, because I've insisted on it that I want them to play out the back. And, they haven't perfected it, and they pay the consequences for it. The match against Honduras, Mario Gonzalez looked very uneasy the whole time. He was a liability with the ball. And I think that kind of influenced things going into the Canada match, where they're like, you know what, we're not going to use him as a first option playing at the back. We're going to depend either on our fullbacks on the wings or trying to generate in the middle, which is very risky. I don't know. What do you think, Hugo?
Yeah, well, you just cover many subjects right now. Look, yes, I think whatever we say, some may take it as excuses. I think a lot of our audience probably has a slightly different mentality than the Salvadorians from El Salvador. But I mean, I've been reading all sort of crazy things since this game. It seems like, first of all, we have short-term memory. We easily forget where we came from. We easily forget that we were playing a style that nobody liked. Nobody. And we played that way for 3 years. And yes, I have to admit, in this past 3 matches, we were not able to play our game. We had little glimpses here and there of what we can do, of what we saw in the Gold Cup, but we were not able to do that in these 3 games. But saying things like the guys who come from abroad have shown that they
the Chicanos,
the
as people like to call them.
People calling them Chicanos. I'm sorry, but I mean, it's okay if you're against players coming from abroad, but at least get educated and learn about the different terms. And it's very difficult for me to, as a Salvadorian, to see that there are opportunistics. There are people out there hoping that the national team loses just so they can start attacking the national team.
Yeah, they're the same people that were talking shit with the Los Cobos. They're the same people talking shit with Lara. They're the same people that were talking shit with Roca. Like, it gets old, but I mean, at least it's somewhat entertaining.
I mean, I've been doing this for 11 years, guys. I've been hearing the same story over and over again. If you're going to support the national team. And I'm not saying having disagreements is it's a problem. No, we can all have disagreements. But
or not like certain things.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. We're not going to like certain players. We're not going to like certain coaching decisions, whatever it is. But trying to always look at the negative side and almost hoping that we have a bad result just so that you can fulfill your
on social media. That's
basically
what it is.
The Chicanos. Yeah. Chicanos, seriously.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
we know who that guy follows.
I've been called worse by like even my own relatives, so it's not that
nothing
bad.
Nothing against Chicanos.
Oh yeah,
by the way.
Yeah.
But
no, obviously, but it's like it's funny how they're willing to call Salvadorans born here Chicanos, but if Americans or Mexicans or Europeans call them catrachos or use the wrong flag in a post, you know, or said pupusas were from Guatemala, you know, they're the same people that would be all like butthurt about that. So it's ironic in a sense, but yeah, you see a lot of banter going on. You see a lot of negativity. I think the main thing is you kind of have to just break things down. And I think the main thing that we saw not work was not, in my opinion, I would have liked to see a little more rotations in management of minutes, considering the 3 matches just all bunched together. Our squad was one of the ones that had the most players with the most minutes. And I think we kind of saw the consequences of that in the 3rd match. I mean, they did a great job against the US, obviously. 0-0 draw is very acceptable. 2nd match against Honduras, we kind of just played to their game, you know. It was a choppy match, very physical. We weren't really able to create much. And then on top of that, Honduras parked the bus on us. So even though we had possession, there wasn't too many spaces to you know, get an attack going. And they played the counter. And fortunately for El Salvador, they didn't come up, with the 3 points out of El Cusca that we've gotten way too accustomed to with Honduras. And then against Canada, they just seem out of gas. That's basically it, just completely out of gas. And in the Gold Cup, we would see a first half where maybe they didn't start the best way possible, but we'd see adjustments made and we'd see another face to the team. And I think because of the 2 prior matches, the traveling and whatnot, there wasn't enough energy, I think, to be able to make that switch against Canada. And I think that's something that hopefully is addressed moving forward, where, you use some of those options on the bench to just keep everybody fresh, because each match is its own battle. Yeah, and I think it's just important that we use that depth that we have in the midfield to keep legs fresh, to keep ideas fresh. Because you and I were talking, when you mentioned that up to a point, you think that by now our rivals have been able to study the team more, and you felt like that was reflected.
Yeah, I think that, based on what I saw, where, again, I said it earlier, I don't think we were able to play our game. And I think that the rivals, perhaps when we started playing under Hugo Perez, they had the perception of, or the idea of El Salvador playing in the way that we play with under Carlos de los Cobos, which was very different, very, very defensive. We didn't really try to generate much. With Hugo, I think we saw more of an exciting game where we were pressing up high. We had a lot of possession. We put a lot of men in the area. I think the rivals pressure us very, very high. U.S., Honduras, Canada, they all did the same thing to us, and I think we struggle. We struggle to find spaces. We struggle to find a few combination of passes up high and generate some opportunities. That in part is because, we are still a young team, a new team with a coach that has only been there 4 months. And the style that we're trying to play is not easy to implement. And I think that's part of the reason why Hugo was asking for more time with the players. And those who don't support the national team teams down there, they were saying, well, but no other team does that. That doesn't happen in any other part of the world. That's true, but we are not like any other team in other parts of the world. The reality is that the team show that they look better, that they perform better when the team has had more time to work together. Prior to the Gold Cup, the team had been together for 3 weeks or so. And it showed in many aspects, physically, tactically, the players seemed to be more in sync with what they were trying to do. And that is the reality of our league. The level and the intensity and the style of play of the teams down there is completely different than what the players are expected to do in the national team. And the only way you're going to improve on that is by training more time together, by having more games, and we need that. So I think that the rivals know the style that we're trying to play, and they were playing very compact, and we didn't find the spaces. We didn't. And that's part of the reason why I completely disagree when I read comments about we need a killer, we need a number 9, we need this and we need that. Yes, I agree. That has always been, historically has been a position that we lack, a center forward. However, to me, it's like Rivas proved that he can be our number 9 if he gets balls fed to him.
If he's involved, yeah.
If he's involved. And Rivas, Walmer, Eric didn't play much, but they didn't really have the ball in a comfortable way that a center forward, number 9, needs it in order to create something. So so to me, it's more like, what can we do in the midfield? How can we create more? How can we put more bodies up there so that we can create more goal opportunities? To me, that's what it's all about. I'm not against bringing perhaps another forward, but I don't think that that's the problem. I think we just need to generate more, and I think we did that really well in the Gold Cup, so we know we can do it. But it is a different intensity in a international World Cup qualifier, and I do think that for our players, for our league level, having the players have more time with Hugo Perez really pays off and it makes a difference. And I hope the league and the federation can come into an agreement to have the players with the national team more microciclos prior to the October fixtures.
As you mentioned, I think the main issue is the mid. We need a mid that is strong defensively, but then can make those transitions into an attack. And I think what was exploited was that high press. For the most part, the touches between Narciso, Darwin, and Marvin, if they combined, it was especially in the Canada match, in this case, Enrico, because he started against Canada, but it was always in these really super tight spaces where it was almost like a rondo, like a keep away drill at practice that never turned into creating space. We never had that extra dribble that turned into, breaking away from one line of the defense and creating space. So I think we're going to need to work on the transitions, definitely on being smarter, playing out of the back. But I think if no one is there to combine with Marvin, right, on the buildup and then reach the wingers, reach the 9, it's going to be very hard. And I think that's what people need to remember when it comes to the lack of a 9 right now is there wasn't any buildup against Canada. It was all either in the half or on the defensive third of the pitch. And you're not going to be able to take shots from that far. That's why we had none on goal, which is a horrible stat line. We had most of the possession, but 0 shots on target. And I mean, looking at the news today, it looks like Cristian Martinez got his passport. Considering some of the clips I've seen and kind of the need that we have in the mid of having someone with that dual functionality of being able to stop and disrupt, but also get rid of the ball and get things going. He seems like a viable option. I've said it plenty of times. I think a player like Buñuel or Mayen is another option, someone with experience that can control the tempo, especially when Canada had hijacked the game and tempo. You needed someone to just be able to take the ball and do their thing with it rather than just seem to be in just emergency mode and making emergency touches, because that's when we lose the ball and it turns into a goal. So those are other options as well. And I think Hugo will be able to, analyze those possibilities, but I do think we need answers in the mid. We need a build-up. Just comparing this octagonal to the last Hexagon 9, a lot of the goals that we scored was because there was a buildup. It wasn't just we had one guy that was our playmaker. It wasn't just Cheo. Cheo had players to play off of, and we need that right now. We haven't necessarily seen that. So that is my hope that, they'll be able to organize the midfield. And then you have players like Jairo that if he gets the ball on the wing, he's not isolated, so he has someone to play off. Or if he makes a center or cross, that it's going to go to somebody, because I think we're missing out a lot on Jairo's potential too, because he'll get the ball, go down the line, but then the plays don't end up in much danger, right? So I think that's the main key is working on that buildup, staying sound on the defensive end. Someone please work with Mario inside this and get him confident with his feet, because I know he's going to be fine, but it just seemed that things got into his head, and you can't play out of the back with a shaky keeper.
Yeah, I mean, Mario, again, I think as fans, and we're still fans, regardless of some of us, being involved in other levels, we're still fans. And at the end of the day, what we remember, or what most fans remember, is that amazing save that Mario did against Honduras, some of the amazing stuff that he did against the United States, right? Great. I agree with that. But yes, like you said, against the US, 90% of the balls that he played with his feet were lost balls. They either went to the right or they went outside. He did not seem comfortable. And I mean, he can improve on that. But again, I have to give him props, because despite the fact that against Honduras, for example, he didn't have a lot of work to do, but when we needed him, he was there. And that's important for a goalkeeper, to be able to maintain that level of focus, that level of connection, alertness to the game, to be able to appear when we need them. He did his job. And then in terms of Christian, I mean, if Christian is called up, I think Christian can really help us out a lot. He's a very dynamic player. He's very strong. He's someone that brings muscle to the midfield. In terms of getting balls for us, distributing play, starting plays from the midfield. I think he can be someone who can offer something slightly different than what the current defensive midfielders can do. I think he's a little bit similar to Darwin in a way, but I think Christian is a little bit more of a player who keeps it simple, which sometimes is important in that position, so that you don't end up losing a ball and compromising the team. And yeah, I mean, I just hope, that we, the coaching staff has a lot of work to do. I think they know what they need to do. Like you said, Andres, nobody in the midfield seemed comfortable in most of all 3 games, and that's what I was talking about when I said the high pressure, the high intensity that the rivals brought. I mean, it was a very, very close formation. The pressure was so high up that and I think that's where experience will play a big role, that the players will have to mature very quickly and know how to know what to do in those situations. We saw when we were able to break through that, we created danger. If you saw the only shot that Enrico had, that was a result of Armando being able to get in between the 2 midfielders and kind of fooling them to think that he was going to stop the ball. He could just kind of make the movement, and he was able to break that close mark that Canada had. We ended up with the closest opportunity to goal. And Armando is someone who can do that.
Oh yeah, no, props to him. Just to interject really quick, I really liked how he would position himself on, when the ball would come to him, or if he was fighting for a ball. Guys, my height, so we're not the tallest, but he sure knew how to get his body in between the ball and defender, or how to just drop that shoulder and kind of like create that momentum for himself and stop his opponent. And that's the kind of stuff that we needed to see more, going for those 50-50 balls, or trying to break through those lines of defense.
Yeah, he's a very clever player. He's someone who has really learned how to use his small frame properly against bigger teams, bigger players. I really like the way he plays. Again, I'm not, and as I commented today to someone on my Facebook page, someone who was saying all the Legionarios started against Canada, and we saw that they have nothing to give to the national team. I was like, seriously, I'm not going to judge any player by one game's performance, and judging a player in the game against Canada, to me, it's like, nah, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, it was a whole team breakdown, It
Yeah.
was at a collective level. And I think it's pretty clear cut what needs to be corrected. And I mean, there's not that much time to do it in, but I think the main thing is starting to look at other options as well. You don't have to interrupt or disrupt the core of this team, but I think it's just finding the pieces that could give you an advantage. And I think there's a little bit of wiggle room still. There's still some pieces that haven't been tried out per se, along the lines of veteran players, but also, you have younger guys coming up too. I think in terms of the younger guys, he has, his core set. I don't know how much you want to experiment too much with the younger guys, whether it's the ones playing abroad or the domestically based players. But yes, my big hope is that mid control it, with that buildup, especially from the back. I hope they get those jitters out, and I know a lot of emotions went into these matches. That's qualifying. So hopefully their skin gets a little thicker. They're able to handle the emotions more. I think you still have to ride that wave of positivity coming out of the US match, because I think that's a clear picture of what this team is, that if they're focused, if they stick to their game plan and they don't make too many mistakes that lead to goals early, they're going to be able to carry that momentum even to the second half, which is something that is a novelty for the Salvadoran national team, is playing two strong halves rather than one and then tapering down in the second half. Bonilla is starting to be thrown into the mix again. I mean, I've never been opposed to him playing on the national team. He's just obviously had his issues on the field, off the field. I think he was a little too much in his head when he came back this last time with Hugo Perez in the last round of qualifying. But he's obviously an option there. We'll see how it goes. I know people are still wanting Fito to magically appear in the squad, but my opinion, my stance continues to be the same. I think his peak's over, ladies and gentlemen. He gave us great moments early in his career. He made some choices. He's paid for it, but it's time to move on in that respect. And so you got to work with what you have. And I think the key is the mid, correct the mid, and that'll give us a chance to get more of the results that will be crowd pleasers or fan pleasers. And then at the same time, help this team develop looking into 2026, which I think is the main objective here.
Right, everyone. And the team has another friendly match coming up, which will be a great opportunity for Hugo Perez to try out new players, especially considering that it's outside of the FIFA schedule. So it's going to be against a rival that a lot of us haven't seen in a very, very, very long time, Guatemala.
Okay.
So it's going to be it's good. It's going to be a good opportunity for the local players, again, for Hugo to see new players and explore, more possibilities with the local players. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to call, another player like he's been doing from the US. But definitely those games are great opportunities for the local players, plus those foreign-based players that are signed with professional first teams, but they still haven't made their debut yet, such as Dani Rios, and the guy from DC United,
Garay?
Yes, Jeremy Garay. So, but we'll see. I think a lot of people are tired of that game, but again, it's better to play a game like that than just training sometimes.
Yeah.
So,
just a reminder of why matches like this occur. Number one, it's extremely hard to get another national team to play with outside of the FIFA window. That's it. Fortunately, Guatemala is in the process of rebuilding, and I bet they're anxious to get their squad, together to play. And I bet they're just like us, that we don't necessarily or that they're like us in the sense that they depend, or their major playing pool is within their domestic league. So they're not going to have a hard time fielding a full squad. And that's why these kinds of matches happen. And that's why you have rivals from the area, because you're not going to get, exotic or marquee rivals outside of a FIFA window. And then when you do, I think it's more of a thing of the past, where it's just easier for the organizers to reach out to, a sibling country, if you want to put it that way, that also has a huge community in the same metropolitan area. So it's a win-win situation of being able to sell out or sell the most amount of tickets to those matches. So again, it's a good sparring. That's basically what it is. It's a good sparring. And like Hugo mentioned, it'll be mainly to get the domestic players that are on the national team, if their teams loan them out, because they're not obligated. So that's another question, if they're going to be able to solve that issue. But to try pieces out, and then see what pieces from the domestic league come out, or who can you hone or get ready for those matches coming up, starting it's in October, right, Hugo?
October. Yep.
Yeah. But we'll go into the schedule on that later on, of course. And then just to close out, just want to appreciate everybody for hitting us up right before game time. It's always fun to interact with everybody, because we all have those jitters and that anticipation of the matches. On the YouTube channel, I want to give a shout out to OG Mr. Craze. Thanks for commenting on the Steve Purdy episode. A lot of people liked some of the insight that he gave to his time. I think we're going to try and do another episode down the line where maybe he can elaborate a little bit more on how that experience was for him. Also to Jose Garcia, Irvin Divide, and some new subscribers like John Andres, Ever Flores, and Cynthia Cardosa. So shout out to those listeners, watchers, subscribers on the YouTube channel. You can always find us on Twitter. That's where we do most of the, spur of the moment interaction with people, on the Instagram or Facebook. So thanks again for checking us out. And just remember that there's more of a spot where we're going to digest what happened. We're not here to talk shit to anybody in that sense. Just trying to see it as objective as possible. Obviously, we all have our opinions. We can never be completely objective. But I mean, I think we just want to do it in a way that is somewhat positive. You're going to see me pissed off once in a while. And I'm not going to lie, I was not happy after the tie against Honduras. I didn't like the national team falling into Honduras's game plan, basically. And of course, I did not like the match against Canada, but you just have to step back, realize it's just a game, trust that there's people that have a job to do and that are going to get it done. And I think we're going to see that reflected throughout this qualifying process. It's still early, and let's be honest, ladies and gentlemen, starting this qualifying process with De Los Goals, qualifying seemed like a long shot. Then all of a sudden we're in 6th place and we're like, oh snap, we might be in the hexagonal. COVID hits and then we have to backtrack. But then Hugo comes along and, a different mentality, different style was germinated, and it's still growing and still developing. And we still haven't seen the fruits of it just quite yet. So stay tuned to it. This, if you're pissed off or there's something that you wish would have happened, you can always hit us up. We can always have that dialogue going with other listeners, with us. We're not here to put anybody down. Just don't be calling me no Chicano. Shout out to Chicano love, but don't call me that, please. I'm Salvadoran. But in any case, much love to all you guys. Enjoy listening to the podcast. Don't be afraid to listen to some of the older ones, because you'll be able to get familiarized with this conversation of the dual citizenship that I feel media has just started to kind of discuss a lot leading into this window with, the Pepis, with other players like the Funes Moris of CONCACAF and stuff like that. And then the Broldans. So yeah, feel free to go back, listen to some of our episodes since we dissected with players like Pablo Puñel, with Richard Menjiva, with Gerson Mayen, on what it is to grow up playing in the U.S. youth system, and then finally reaching that point where, okay, where do I go with my international career? So you can hear it from them, not from us or anybody else, but you can hear it from them directly. So just look at our catalog of episodes and you'll be able to pick some of those out, and just keep sharing and spreading the word, because we want to keep this thing going, of course, and we appreciate everyone that's been listening from day one, to all you new followers and listeners and whatnot. So take it easy, everybody, and we'll catch you guys soon with the next episode. So have a good one.